Good morning and welcome to Tiger's Great Journey Read Aloud. Today we are reading The Dungeon of Creativity. And here we have this photo of Tiger in the dark. I have no idea what he's looking at, so let's find out. In this place, Tiger was alone and in complete darkness. He became aware of this like a person waking from a deep sleep, slowly, one detail at a time. There was no light, and he sat against a cold, hard, lumpy surface. Was he sitting on cobblestones? He wondered. Slowly, he unfolded his arms from around his legs and stretched out. He placed his hands on the floor and began to feel around. The floor wasn't warm and it wasn't cold, so he reasoned that he must be inside. But where was he? He asked himself. Tiger stood up to explore his surroundings by touching surfaces with his hands. It was pitch black. He felt stone walls, a corner, another stone wall, another corner, another stone wall, another corner, and now more stone wall, and finally a door. He felt around the door. It was made of heavy timber, about 3 feet wide. He thumped on it with his fist. It was solid, unyielding. Then he realized where he was, in a jail cell. I'm a prisoner, he gasped. But where exactly am I, and how did I get here? Tiger stopped and listened. At first, he couldn't hear a thing, but then the little sounds and sensations we hardly ever pay attention to came into his awareness. A slight movement of air, a drip of water, then another drip, and a few seconds later, another drip. I'm underground, he realized. I wish there was some light, he said. And with that, a candle on the wall to his left sputtered to life. The light was dim, but because he'd been in complete darkness, it nearly blinded him. He quickly looked away and closed his eyes, then slowly opened them as they adjusted to the light. He looked around and saw that his guess was right. He was in a cell, a dungeon to be exact. But why did the candle light when I wished for it? He thought to himself. He looked up and saw an air shaft. It appeared that he could crawl through it if he had to, but it was 8 feet off the ground, too high for him to reach. He put his ear to the door. At first he could hear nothing, but then he became aware of a muffled sound. A few seconds later, he heard steps of several people who were coming his way. Tiger tensed up as he considered what these people might want from him. They stopped outside his door, and he heard them unlocking the cell. He stepped back, and 3 hooded figures in black robes stepped inside as the door opened, their faces invisible in the dim light. 2 of them held short lances, and one of them carried a torch. The one in front tossed a soft package wrapped in white paper at Tiger, who stepped to the side and let it fall to the floor. The lead captor hissed and waved his hand at the candle, putting it out. They turned and slammed the heavy door, locking it as they left. Tiger waited, and after a few minutes, he dared to try his trick again. I need light, he said, and with that the candle sputtered back to life. Tiger stared at it, marveled at what had happened. He looked at the package on the floor near his feet and then picked it up. It felt like food, so he brought it up to his nose. It smelled really good. When he opened it, he found a chunk of cheese with some dried meat. Tiger thought about whether he should eat it and decided that if his mysterious captors wanted him dead, they would have already done it. He took a small bite of cheese and was satisfied that it was good. He was ravenous, but he reminded himself to eat slowly. This made Tiger think of his dad, who was a stickler for chewing each bite thoroughly. He wished his dad were here to get him out of this place. The food made him thirsty, so Tiger thought to say the word water as he cupped his hands. As he did, his hands filled with water. He drank his fill, sat back, and pondered this mysterious power he appeared to have. He said, but nothing happened. Food, but again nothing happened. There must be rules, Tiger thought. Light out, he said, and the dungeon went pitch black. Light, he said, and the candle came back to life. Tiger looked at the paper wrapping from his meal and said fire, and the ball of paper burst into flames. He watched it for a moment and then said, out. He didn't want to waste a resource. He may need to get it out. Then he thought about the black belt Shoka leadership trait of creativity and realized that if he were going to get out, he would need to create an escape plan. He tore off a small piece of paper from the food wrapper and concentrated on it. Fire, he said, and it burst into flames. He smiled. When his captors arrived, he was going to be ready. Tiger sat very close to the door, listening intently. He knew that the success of his plan would depend in large part on his first move. Finally, he heard the footsteps. They seemed to come from the right side of the door. Tiger pressed himself into the corner near the edge of the door and waited. He looked at the candle and wished it out. The footsteps stopped. He heard a bolt draw back, but it wasn't his door. He heard voices and a shout, "Leave me alone!" Tiger's heart jumped. Was that Blake, he wondered? Tiger heard the door close and then footsteps coming his way. He calmed himself and emptied his mind. The bolt on his door drew back and the door swung open. As his captors came into his cell, he threw the wad of paper at them and yelled fire. The paper burst into flames in midair. His captors jumped back in fear, and before they realized what was happening, Tiger was out the door and running. He raced down the long corridor. His captors had recovered from their initial surprise and were in hot pursuit. The hall was lit with torches, and as Tiger passed the first one, he yelled, "Out!" and the torch died. As he came to a corner, he saw steps leading up to a passageway. He quickly bolted up the stairs. "Out!" he said as he passed another torch, and out it went. At the top of the stairs, the hallway split left and right. Tiger paused for a moment and felt a slight breeze coming from the right, so he turned that way. Behind him, his pursuers were making their way up the stairs. "Out!" Tiger said as he passed another torch, and out it went. The hall had made several turns, and now ahead he could see a door. He ran up to it and stopped to listen. He heard voices coming from inside. He could also hear his captors scrambling behind him, trying to figure out which way he'd went. He turned the knob slowly and pushed the door in. He saw the backs of 3 guards sitting at a table. On the wall close to the door was a torch. Next to the torch were cloaks hanging on a wall. He stepped inside and slid behind the cloaks. "Out," he whispered, and the room went black. "Where is he?" a voice hissed as the torch was relit. "Where is who?" another answered. Tiger looked down at his feet and tried to remember if the cloaks went all the way down to the floor, but he couldn't recall. "The boy, you fool," Hisser, the head guard, said. "Where is the boy that ran in here?" "We didn't see a boy. The lights went out. He must have run through the dark." "After him now," Hisser shouted. The guards jumped to their feet and flew out the door. Tiger carefully peered out from the cloak that covered him. One guard had remained behind and was slowly turning and surveying the room. Tiger pulled the cloak back around him and waited, willing his pounding heart to be still. Then he heard the door open and slam shut. The guard had left. Tiger peeked from behind the cloaks once more and found the room empty. "It won't take them long to send someone back," he thought. "I have to act quickly." Tiger grabbed a cloak and put it on. It easily concealed his white gi. He saw a length of rope lying in the corner and went to grab it. There was a knife on the table, and he grabbed that too. He eyed the other weapons, lances, short swords, long swords, and some armor, but thought they too would be too hard to conceal and too noisy. He turned towards the door and spied one last item which might prove useful. In the commotion, someone had dropped their keys. He picked them up off the floor and stashed them into his gi under the robe. Tiger thought about Blake and headed out the door to find him. And that is where we're going to leave off today. So to be continued, we will pick up next time and finish out the creativity in the dungeon. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great day. Bye-bye.